Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. Today we're going to finish off Bryan's Choice Week, and I actually have one that I heard a song from them earlier this month, and I shared it actually just the other day on YouTube text posts. If you don't have text posts enabled, you should. I've started doing a lot of these recently, sharing things that I found. And yeah, so this one I checked out from Sanguine Glacialis. It was called Kraken, and it was this weird swing death metal concoction. And yeah, so I'm intrigued about what else they do. So we're going to be checking out another track of theirs today called Missa di Angelis. I want to remind everybody to subscribe, ring the bell, and if you want to help support the channel, I got a Patreon. So yeah. All right, let's get into the reaction though, and then after that we'll hit up the analysis section. Ooh, yeah. Okay, so this also has a very interesting combination of metal. I love that piano line. It sounds so out of place against the aggressiveness of the metal though. Switch to a waltz. Yeah, that is actually a very smooth transition from 3/4 to 4/4. Yeah. It's such a strange mix, but it works. That vocal range too. Yeah, that offbeat accent. Yeah. I think it was like that before, but we had faster hi-hats, and I don't think it was as prominent. Right there, it is though. It's very bouncy because of that. Alright. Got some layered vocals. Okay, that was slick. Yeah. They're just all over the place. Doing those 8-bar field changes and then going into the death metal. run there to bring us back into what I assume is the chorus. All right, so what are they? I feel like this is some foreshadowing right here. Yeah, it's actually some really good foreshadowing in here. That is a strong transition, 100%. Uh, yeah, this nice little call and response rhythmic. Just really going into that metal. Golly, what a way to end that. All right. So, yeah, that's it's interesting. There's if you haven't yet, you should definitely go check out the song Kraken by them. Um because this band's wild. Um there's definitely some similarities between the two songs, and I can see I'm starting to get a larger picture of what their style is, but the two songs are also very they have some unique aspects to them that just differentiate them a bit. Um, let's get into this analysis though. So there's so many cool things happening in here. Um, first of all, the singing. I don't know if you can get more diverse than growls and operatic singing. Both of them require a ton of skill, and I'm not a vocal coach, but I'm going to wager it requires a ton of skill in two different directions, two different techniques. Neither one of them are easy to learn by themselves, and this person has mastered possibly both of them. If not, they're very strong at both sides. It's just it blew my mind when I checked out Kraken, and it still is just the strangest thing. Um, phenomenal. But it's like we don't. It's I can't even talk. There's this disconnect between the two vocal styles, but then there's also a really strong disconnect between the two musical styles that they're mashing together. Um, there is a sort of this one's not as swingy as Kraken was, but there's still something jazzy, maybe even loungy, about how the keyboard, the piano's worked in, and some of the chord and note relationships that are chosen throughout the song. And it's like this smooth jazz kind of lounge concept with like a hint. I don't know if anybody else hears this. I get a hint of ragtime, right? It's obviously not ragtime, but I feel like there's just the faintest um inspiration that kind of leaks its way into some of the piano lines. And like all of this gentler, more passive-esque music being injected into this, death metal. And it's just the strangest thing. Um, there's I You guys heard what I heard. If you could put it into words, drop a comment or something. I'm having a hard time really explaining how wild this is. But yeah, just overall the song composition, the various divergent ideas that they bring together and put into a single song is just mind blowing. And the fact that it works so well, I think that's the thing that gets me the most. We've heard some crazy genre combinations on the channel before, and I've been blown away a little bit by some of them, but I don't know, this might be the furthest that my brain has had to stretch to fully grasp what is happening with a genre merger. But I don't. I think we're just gonna move on because I don't have words for how mind-boggling and awesome this is. Awesome in like the original intent, like to be in awe of the presence of this combination. Um, but yeah, let's get into the music itself. So there's actually two styles of music here, and while they do overlap at times, I feel like there's also a very strong disconnect between them at other times. And eh, it can almost be heard anytime the piano drops out. And I think when that happens, we enter into a very concrete death metal variant of the song. I don't know if it's because the guitars take over, lead melodic instrument. Um, I gotta dig back in and listen, but I'm kind of thinking that the guitars are doing chord work a lot, leaving the piano for more of the melody line to go with the growls. And when the piano cuts out, the guitar is typically written in to take that place, and with that guitar tone coming in, it just sounds heavier. It sounds metalier. I think that's what's happening. But like I said, I'd have to go back and really look at everything in that specific lens. But there are moments where it's like a light switch. It just clicks, and you're like, okay, now we have some of the jazzier elements in here. And then just on a dime, the jazzy elements are stripped out, and you're like, okay, this is straight metal. And like I said, there are moments where they overlap, of course, but like I said, there's also these moments where you can just hear half of the inspiration being stripped out of the song. So that's an interesting choice. Uh, that was also present in Kraken, if I remember correctly. A lot of the song was this merger, but then they also had moments where they stripped out some of the swing elements, and it felt more straight death metal. So yeah, it's really interesting because I never really know where they're going until we're there, and so they tend to keep me on my feet when I'm listening. Speaking of being kept on my feet, though, there is one part where they just had this phenomenal transition, and it was out of the second chorus. And the second repetition of that second chorus, um, the instruments started changing up their rhythmic pattern. There was a new rhythmic pattern introduced that was underneath the operatic vocals, and it wasn't one for one what was going to come next, but it was more in line with the more rhythmic oriented writing that was going to come in the next section, and it was just beautiful to hear musical foreshadowing, um, and then to enter into that next section utilizing elements from it and using them a few bars before it starts. And that is how you do a transition. I've talked about Not necessarily bad transitions in the past, but harsh transitions. And a lot of that is with the bands that are sort of wild and crazy, um, a band of rebellion, or uh, Between the Buried and Me, where you just have section A, section B, section C, and there is no transition between them. It is just one bar we're in A, the next we're in B, and uh, that is the complete opposite of this. That would be a harsh transition, and this is a very smooth one. And this is the kind of transitions I like to listen to for the most part. And sometimes we can achieve this with a melody line that covers it up, and they actually did that a few times. Um, there was one moment, I don't remember where it was. It might have been coming out of the first chorus, the first time we heard the chorus, but the guitar line after the vocalist sang her final line, the guitarist took that idea and repeated it. Um, and that was to cover up the transition to going back into the verse or whatever came up after that. Um, and it's borrowing the previous idea to take us into the next, which is the opposite, but it was done on the melodic level. They took the melodic line and reused it to cover the seam, whereas on the second or the second chorus, they used the next rhythmic pattern and introduced it early so that when we went to the next section, it didn't seem so disjointed. We had already begun to appreciate and hear these new ideas. So when the entire band shifted to it, we were already accustomed to that sound, and it's not so stark of a difference. It's done so well. Actually, I would say that most of their transitions in the song were done very well as far as covering up the seams and not being disjointed, which is, I think, important. They could definitely be a band that just slams their death metal and jazzier elements against each other and gives you whiplash while we switch between two sections. We've seen bands that do that before, and they're wildly successful bands, so that's a sound that people enjoy. But just for me personally, I really like it when there's smooth transitions between ideas, especially when we're looking at stark transitions. And this song, they just nailed it. Almost every transition just had a smooth movement into it, whether it was um, a genre moving from like operatic and melodic to rhythmic and growls, whether it was um, switching off between a verse to chorus or, any of it. There's just these really nice, even tempo changes were done with gradual retardandos into the new tempo. And one of the times they did it, for some reason, I think it caught me off guard. I thought we were moving to a new section, and instead, I think we went to a new verse, and it was just like piano and the growls. uh, the whole band slowed down and went to just piano and growls to introduce us back into that concept, into that time, the tempo, and yeah, that was wild. Did not see that. I think that's what I appreciate most. I've talked about this before. I enjoy novelty. The more I listen to the song, the less it's going to have me on my guard, the less I'm going to have to listen to appreciate what's going on, and the less times it can surprise me. But on a first time listen, I was surprised repeatedly. At least two full sections, I can say I did not expect seeing coming, and I was caught off guard by them, and I love that feeling. That's not anything you could ever get on a subsequent listen, but I look for it in first listens. It's so fun to be on that roller coaster ride and not be able to predict what's going on. Um, so yeah, I think that's phenomenal, especially since they kind of merged that with the foreshadowing. They actually did a lot of parts that gave you clear indication of what was going on in the future, where the song was heading. They gave you some signposts, but other times they kind of steered you the wrong way and pulled the rug out from under your feet. And I just love how it's a playful song. Speaking of playfulness, that bouncy, right? That offbeat accent. Um, the section that they went to twice, I think. They started in it and then they came back to it a little bit later. It just makes you want to dance. It has that nice, swing lounginess to it. It just makes you want to get up and dance. And yeah, the fact that they could mix that in with death metal, I don't know how this band exists. how, how they create this music, it kind of blows my mind. Um, I think there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and unfortunately, I can't remember. I really enjoy that they have multiple singers. Their guitarist and bassist also do vocals. The guitarist did vocals in Kraken as well. He did harmonized vocals with the lead. The bassist doing the growls was new. I hadn't seen that before, and I really enjoy that. I've mentioned before that I just like multiple singers in a band. I don't know if it's just the sort of that performance aspect, the jaw dropping part where everybody's multitasking. You have all these people playing instruments and singing, and there's just some awesomeness to that. Viewing that, performance wise, or what. But I just I don't know. I really dig seeing lots of people jump in on vocals, harmonizing or doing cannons or call and response. It's so good, and it's something we just don't see enough, I think, in modern popular music. So yeah, those are my thoughts though on Glacialis. I apologize for I probably mispronounced that and the song this entire video, unfortunately. I'm definitely going to have to get corrected on both of those. But I am digging this group. And I think death metal is something I can get into, but it has to be mixed with something else. I've, I have Ginger's albums, and their death metal with metalcore and new metal and pop. And I have Wintersea's albums, and I would say that they're death metal with prog rock elements, um, and a little bit of rock. But and then this one, I'm really digging this, and I would say that this is death metal with jazz elements. And I think it's just something about bringing in softer genres and combining them with death metal. I don't know. I don't know, but this is three death metal plus something else bands that I've gotten into that I've enjoyed where the growling doesn't really bother me. I don't know if it's because it's not heard as much. When we look at straight death metal bands, the growling is 100% there all the time. I can get through a song. I would never be able to get through a whole album though. And with this stuff, the growling is not present 100% of the time. It is offset with other types of vocals. And I think that's kind of a key there. Just using these other elements to soften up the growls, to soften up the brutality, to introduce some contrast into stuff that's more palatable, to make the death metal one. It's in context, which means that the death metal is more brutal because it's buttressed by the less harsh elements. But also, it makes it so that the death metal elements are less prevalent, and they don't have the chance to exhaust me as a listener personally. I can kind of get to that point where I'm like, okay, it's starting to push me, and then they can back off and introduce some other elements to the track, and I can kind of take a breather before we get back into it. And I've talked about this before. I would label this as, another one of these bridge bands. Has elements from more palatable music to help people get into um, harsher musics. And this one actually introduces what I would say is probably some classical metal elements. You got the operatic singing and the big wide synth floors. Um, and yeah, I'd say that the chorus to this feels very Nightwishy. Uh, uh, What's that other band that we checked out? I don't remember. Nightwish is always the band that comes to mind when I think of the genre. Um, but yeah, so I can see the bridge between more palatable stuff and the death metal. And I really love bands like this that can help people move from one genre to another. I think we need more of this. And the more that we do this channel, the more I'm finding bands to fill this gap. And I love that. It's amazing. Um, but yeah, those are my thoughts on the band. The song Missa di Angelis by Sanguine Glacialis. That's where you guys come in. They'll hit me up in the comments. Let me know if you enjoyed it or not. Anything that stuck out to you. Anything you want to talk about. Anything that you noticed that maybe I didn't get to touch on. Maybe I didn't hear in my first time. Drop those comments. Above that's the comment section. Above that is the description box with some links adjacent to the channel, like the aforementioned Patreon, but also Twitter and Discord and some other links in there. Also, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. All three things help out the channel immensely. I'll be back tomorrow at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, with some special selection stuff. And we'll round that out before starting next week's melancholy music. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, next week is melancholy music. So we're going to be looking at some introspective, sad, not meditative, but thoughtful music. I think it's going to be pretty interesting. A whole week of that. All right, until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening whenever you choose to watch my videos.